Well, good afternoon and welcome into another edition of Interrupting Racism. My name is Brian Prawitz and I'm the host of this here streamcast, which basically comes from the effort that continues to burn inside of me, which is to tell perspectives from various experiences from various perspectives among the leaders in the state of Oregon. And there's almost no better way to do that than through the network that we call the ALF Senior Fellow Network. ALF stands for the American Leadership Forum. There is a chapter here in Oregon based out of Portland, and I'm a proud alum of ALF Class 34 a couple of years ago. And this network of about 700 graduates throughout the state of Oregon includes some incredible people, all of them looking for ways to serve Oregon and serve their communities. And it's my pleasure to introduce you, if you aren't aware of ALF or aren't aware of some of these senior fellows, to introduce you to some of the people around the state of Oregon who are doing incredible work and to share their experience with you, hopefully to increase understanding and awareness and acceptance and tolerance and love throughout the entire state of Oregon. And today, I'm very happy to bring to Interrupting Racism Anthony Veliz. Anthony is the founder of ESO Marketing, graduate of the class of 15 of ALF, and has a very deep history in the Woodburn area. And we're going to learn a lot from Anthony. And today, I just welcome you to the show. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. Always a pleasure to be with this fellow senior fellows. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I could run through your bio, but it's always more interesting to hear somebody kind of give a detail of their own biography. So how do you describe yourself, or what would you share with us in your bio?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely a lifelong public servant. I was born into my parents were when my grandparents arrived in 1946. My grandparents, my parents, and we've lived in Woodburn the whole time. We're 5 generations here, and I just think that I was fortunate enough to learn from the best, which are my parents, who were activists in the Cesar Chavez boycott movement, the farm worker movement. And I've got to see things that most Oregonians have not been able to experience and witness. So I think I bring all of that to my life and to the society today. So,
talk about your experience in Woodburn. You were there before a lot of the growth that we've seen in the Woodburn area. I mean, you've been invested there for a really long time.
Absolutely. You know, I was here when the Latino community was like 5% of the population. And over the years, you know, having grown to elementary school and middle and high school, I think what really the tipping point is when we hit critical mass, about 20% of the population. And that's when people started speaking up and advocating more for our Latino community. And I think I would say the old guard, the people that have been here for a long time, there was some tension there because they were perfectly fine living in Woodburn the way it was, but the demographics were changing so rapidly that there had to be some changes, and I think that's where some of that tension started back in the days.
It got to a point where there had to be some changes. What do you mean?
Well, we quickly became the majority of the city, the Latino community. We became 50 plus percent of the population, but we had no representation. One example is in the school board, where actually in K-12 today it's like 95% Latino, but back in those days it was more pronounced, like 70%. And in the early 2000s, I became the first Latino ever elected to the school board. So that's the kind of change that I'm really talking about, is representation, having a voice, and so basically having the needs of all the community met, not just a select few.
Yeah. Among the things that Anthony has done in about 30 years of public service includes having a seat on the State Board of Education and also the Oregon Youth Authority State Advisory Committee, and the former president of the Woodburn Downtown Association. So and not to mention you spent some time at Nike, and you've really been around. You've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Which of those things stands out in your mind right now as we look at some of the social issues that we have in front of us? Mm-hmm. You have a lot of irons in the fire. You are active on so many levels and so many fronts. Where do you come down with, okay, here are some of the issues we have in front of us right now, and being able to serve your community, the community we've been talking about?
Yeah. So I think all those experiences and some that we haven't mentioned yet is just a culmination of where I am today. I think what's really prominent and just took center stage earlier this year is obviously COVID-19. But one of the things, having been in Woodburn my entire life and seen movements that have started from just a thought, right? Just an aspiration. I've been blessed to see those things come to fruition, such as Colegio Cesar Chavez, which was a kind of a Latino college in the 1970s. I got to see Salud Pacun Farm Worker Union in Woodburn. I got to see that before it was actually became a reality through the vision of Cipriano Ferrer. Salud Medical Center, the first farm worker clinic, and on, right? So I think all that has kind of built me perfectly for today to take on one of our actually most global challenges in my lifetime, which is COVID-19. And so to just make it brief, I knew being in Woodburn that instinctively that if we as Latino community members did not organize and rally around our most vulnerable among us, which are our undocumented, our indigenous Mesoamericans, our immigrants, the poor, the hungry, the homeless, the incarcerated, and all of those voiceless folks out there, that if we didn't rally around them and support them with all due respect to all of our allies, then no one really truly would. And it's really played out that way.
Well, I know what you're leading up to is the fact that you founded the Latinx Leadership Network. So you took action. Talk about what the action is that was taken and the result. This is really remarkable. And for anybody who wants to take a look at how you can serve your own community or ways that people of color in the state of Oregon need to watch out for each other a little bit, I think this is a really spectacular illustration of that, Anthony.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it's something I've been doing my entire life. I think just the platform and the seriousness of what is happening just became on a more statewide level. And basically, you know, how it all started is literally where I'm at today. I get to hear and see cars start up at 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning. I get to, when I'm outside, I get to greet my neighbors. 12 hours later, 14 hours later, they're tired, they're dirty, they're exhausted. And, you know, I just couldn't, I'm privileged, right? We're both privileged to be sitting here and be able to self-quarantine and, you know, and all of those things that need to happen. But a big segment I know of my community is unable to do that. And so I just really felt that, you know, it was my responsibility as a human being and as part of the Latino community, as a leader, that I needed to do something about it. So what I did is I literally gathered 80 plus of my good friends from all across the state of Oregon who either run community-based organizations or serve on them or support them. And I started hosting these town hall meetings every Wednesday. And in the beginning, that one of our first things to do was to create a call to action, because I'm a very action-oriented person. And it was a document that it laid out really what our areas of focus are, which are, of course, make sure that our nonprofits, community-based organizations in your neighborhood or mine survived, right? Especially in the Latino community, because if those go away, then that could be pretty detrimental to our community. Another area, obviously, is health. Of course, it's a pandemic, education, employment, housing, all of these areas. And we basically wrote a call to action, sent it to every public elected official in Oregon. And that really kind of was a catalyst to where we are today.
The Latinx Leadership Network. So there is a document, a PDF of the call to action you put together. It's a link to the Statesman Journal who put it out there. Is that the end result, that document itself that went out?
That is the beginning of that is the beginning. That was something that we put together because we wanted to bring light to it. And again, our movement, it's a movement. So Oregon Latinx Leadership Network is a movement. And one thing historically about Latinos is this is like who we are. It's our being. When we had the Cesar Chavez movement, the civil rights movement, all those were movements. They were literally the people from when you talk about Cesar Chavez, he literally organized the farm workers of not only California, but across the country. The least among us, right? They didn't have education. They didn't have political power. They didn't have economic power. Some of them weren't even U.S. citizens, but they were able to galvanize and use that collective to change the course of their lives, which in turn changed the course of mine.
I am really, really naive about all of that history. I've certainly heard of Cesar Chavez a little bit, but I just am admittedly very, very ignorant, never been really educated on a lot of that. And so while you're talking about these key moments in the history of Latinos in Oregon, I'm a challenge there to learn more. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, definitely, it's all important history. And one thing again that makes my life so unique is that there's these iconic organizations that are now very prominent in the Latino community. They've been around for decades, 30, 40 years. Happened to be there before they existed, when they were just a vision. And that's kind of, I think, with Oregon Latinx Leadership Network, it's like, it's the same thing. It was a vision, right? It didn't exist. And then I just started sharing that vision, that aspiration, and people started coming together, and it became this huge movement. Now there's no stopping it.
Ah, man. Well, I think everybody who gets involved on a grassroots level for some kind of change that they're hoping for hopes that it turns out the way that you've just described right there.
Yeah.
It's got to feel good, obviously, but that's not why you're in it.
No, it's really in the moment, trying to help those the most vulnerable, like I mentioned, among us. And it has a spiritual side, which I won't get into too much, but there is part of that, of my faith, is part of it. But I think really, my parents, they're very spiritual people, and I think I turned that spirit of giving, the humanity part. I just turned that into public service. It's the same thing. We're here to serve.
That's really good stuff. Anthony Veliz with us here on Interrupting Racism. We'll have a link, by the way, to that call to action PDF, at least to give some people some direction to, what we've been talking about, what you were referring to. Boy, there's a lot of directions we can go from here. As I think about, so I'll share just kind of my own experience. And you and I talked about this on the phone the other day, and we talk about, this covers a lot of ground. I mean, this is immigration, this is understanding, this is communities. I'm in Roseburg, and in Roseburg, we know we've got about 10% of our population is Latinx, which, by the way, is a fairly new term, at least for me. And in fact, I was speaking to a guy from El Salvador the other day, and I said Latinx, and he said he didn't even know what that was. What is Latinx?
It's funny. You know how language is fluid, right? And I think this is just an evolution of that. So, before I think in the Reagan administration, he coined the term Hispanic, right? There was really no term to categorize people, from that spoke Spanish from the Western Hemisphere, the Caribbean, Spain. And so then after that, it became Latino. Well, actually, let me back up. It became the Chicano movement, the Mexican American movement, and all of these different, variations. And then it became Latino. And so Latinx is really just kind of a more of a evolving term, but it's trying to be more the most inclusive word, but it's so new, and it's so funny that you mentioned that, because it is controversial just within our community, because it's a younger generation, a millennial type description, and I think my parents or people that are older than me, they wouldn't even know what it is.
Right.
So that's not uncommon, but I think that's where we all evolve, right? And like Hispanic used to be a very, very, very acceptable term. That was the only one that anybody knew. But now it's not as acceptable. In some ways, sometimes you might get pushback if you use that word too. So it's fluid, but we all it's the same people, regardless of what we're called.
Yeah, I was going to say it, and actually I'm getting the vibe that Hispanic now is a term that is sort of frowned upon, and Latino at least, and then Latinx. But
yes.
So we're here in Roseburg. We've got about a 10% Latinx population in our neighborhood, but I never see the Spanish-speaking people in our community. Obviously I'm a white guy. I'm a businessman in downtown Roseburg, a city councilor. I go to all the events. I don't hardly ever see the Latinx, whether they're migrant workers, whether they live here. I just don't ever see them. We're not invited to their events. They're not invited to ours, it seems. And there might be some obvious reasons for that. Don't get me wrong. I understand the tension that might be there. But I also want to know, how in the heck how can we be a bridge toward one another? What is the way that we can at least get the message out to Latinx people around here to let them know that there are people that are that care about them or want to help them access services? Because if they're part of this community, they have the same challenges and issues that everybody else has, and sometimes need help from, say, the city of Roseburg. How, without coming off as, hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, which is a very easy trap to fall into. What do you do? How is it possible to build any kind of bridge like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, people ask me that question, in Woodburn, I always tell them, well, I am the bridge. I didn't build the bridge. I am the bridge. And the way I would just characterize that, and to answer your question, is that I think you have to really be basic. One of the things that's really basic is just acknowledging people and giving them a smile and a handshake and extend that olive branch. That fundamentally can go a long way. But if you really think about it, we don't even do that. We ignore people because we're too busy. And but I think that's like a start, right? A smile, acknowledging, a nod. I mean, believe it or not, that's where you start. When it comes to really getting into like the depth of the community, I do think, if you want to know where Latinos are in Oregon and probably across the country, they're in two places. They're in churches, and then they're in schools, whether that's K-12 or community colleges. That's where you'll find the masses, because we're very, very young population, and have a lot of faith. So if you want to find us, that's where you can find us. And I think that's where you could start potentially. I'm not exactly sure with Roseburg, but I think and then I'm sure you have a few. I've been to a Mexican restaurant and two, but what happens is everybody wants to talk to that one business, right, owner, and they get pulled a lot of ways. But I think really it's just about one step at a time. I do think, it's you got to kind of go where the people are, build those relationships, and then really invite them. Like this was exactly what Woodburn went through again, like decades ago. There was, like I mentioned, there was a point where we were only 5%, the same kind of questions and whatnot. And I think what happens over time, it will happen because of longevity has its place, about educational attainment, business, will become more successful. But I think what you're saying is we have to be more intentional. Let's just try to shorten that time frame. We were talking generations. Let's move it down to more years. And how we do that is really fundamental in my opinion. Language, people, because I was the president of Woodburn Downtown Association, a lot of people from our city, they were all nervous about going downtown, even though the same city literally blocks away, but they didn't speak Spanish, or the people on the other end didn't speak English. I go, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you go in there, you shake your hand, or you can't do that now, right? But you smile and you acknowledge, maybe take somebody, and maybe there's somebody there who can help you kind of fumble through it. But that's where it all starts, right? But if there's no attempt at that level, then it's really hard to really just make it happen. I think it's got to be more of an informal thing.
And then, but isn't there also a natural distrust right now with the Latinx population to the established, for instance, government? Here I am, I'm an elected official. And I mean, with immigration issues that we've seen, I've heard horrible stories, even from the Woodburn, Canby area, when the people in the Latinx community live in constant stress in many cases of coming home, the kids coming home from school and the parents aren't there because they've been detained by immigration and that kind of thing. So I'm thinking that potentially could play into a distrust if I were to really try to make an effort to reach out, or maybe it's just something I just need to be aware of, that it isn't going to be a maybe automatically warm welcome if somebody in my shoes were to reach out and say, I'm here because I care.
Yeah, I think that what you said is completely true. There has always been for decades now, maybe generations, this dark cloud of this immigration issue that America we haven't solved yet, right? And there is that constant stress, and that has happened. I shared a story with you before about a dad getting picked up and never coming home again ever, and then the family left here when he had lived here for like 30 some years. OSU grads. I mean, the whole nine. You wouldn't even know that they were undocumented until this happened, right? But I think that I do think it's really it'll take time, and it'll be but there's always going to be somebody in the community who will kind of step out of that comfort zone and reach out. But then we have to reach both reciprocal. I think let me kind of put it really in the simplest way I can. So the way mainstream wants to work is with let's get to work and get to know you along the way, right? Let's just do business, the task at hand, and then get to know you. The Latinx, the Latino community wants to get you to know you first, build that relationship, that trust, and then we can do business. And I think if you come at it that way, you'll have a lot more success, because I think if you come in all official and all this, it'll just make people stand up. Okay, what do you want? But if you come in as like Anthony Veliz and I have no agenda, I would just like to meet you, and get to know you. And, I think that's the secret sauce at some level to really building relationships.
So this streamcast is called Interrupting Racism. And lately what I've found around a lot of people in my network is before we can talk about things like Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, or whether people in your community suffer from racism in our community or in Oregon, is actually tackling the fact that racism exists. Like it's almost hard to get past the conversation of whether this is a thing we all have to deal with or not. And it seems like many people struggle with just that first part of it. Racism doesn't exist. I've never seen it. And I've heard from some people of color who actually have said that to me. They say, I've never had a problem with racism. I don't know why we keep talking about this thing. Where are you at on that spectrum?
I think it does exist. I've been impacted by that. But I think, I would first start off, racism negatively impacts everybody. But it just impacts certain groups more, right? So let me say why is because it does negatively impact the community when there's again, if you live in a small community and that's happening, it causes stress on the whole system, right? And on everybody, public, private sector, individuals, families, neighborhoods, homes, right? And so it's a cancerous thing, right? But as far as where I'm at, I think I just like to take people where they're at. And again, there is a continuous spectrum that will never end. So I think what I try to do is I try to focus on the task in hand and what I'm really trying to accomplish. And I'm hoping that by leading by example, that people will eventually come along the way, or at least have at least maybe they don't accept it, but they tolerance is not a bad thing, right? They tolerate it, right? Tolerance is good, right? And I mean, it's not racism, but it's, it's somewhere moving the dial. But I do think I agree with you. I have family and friends that have never experienced, believe it or not, in Woodburn, you could live in Woodburn your entire time, be a Latino. You might not ever experience that racism, believe it or not, because we're the majority. It's not a big deal. We're everywhere, right? We run banks, hospital. I mean, everything. We're everything, right? But you step out of here, then all of a sudden you start feeling this people watching you, or, you feel, just these different perceptions or realities, right? When you come out of this bubble. We've had many students that have gone on to a lot of prestigious schools because we have an international baccalaureate program, and they talk a lot about that. They hadn't felt racism until they left the bubble here, and they've gone to Ivy League schools and all the prestigious schools all over the world. And it's really interesting. So there is people of color in different spectrums, but it does exist. I think obviously there's a national movement, and what I would say about that too is that the Latinx completely supports the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think that we definitely support that. I would say also too that we have experienced a lot of the similar issues. They're just maybe not as talked about as much, but we do. I mean, I can rattle on cases here all afternoon if we had to talk about things that have happened.
You touched on something I definitely wanted to make sure we brought up, and that is the representation of the Latinx community in leadership. This was something that you brought up, you're very passionate about.
Yeah.
Because you talked about Woodburn, you've talked about being represented on city council. Now that you were the second city councilor, I understand, that was elected from the Latinx community on city council. So talk about your hope and desire and I don't know, maybe what you're doing in the community to try and get more leadership positions or representation in leadership positions in business, in the community, among Latinx.
Yeah. Great question. Thanks for the question. And I think, there's two big things that I advocate for. It doesn't matter where I'm at. One is equitable representation in leadership role. And the second is equitable distribution of resources. So I say this to lots of folks. I go, the Latinx community is the largest ethnic minority community in Oregon, hands down. We're 13.5% or 2. It's about over 500,000 plus. We've got and on top of that, we've got over 77,000 plus undocumented. But you wouldn't know it if I didn't tell you. And the reason why is because if you look at any public or private institution, large ones, corporate, big business, state agencies, county, city, you will not see Latinos represented in that general number. You just won't. And I've already experienced that. And then when you look at resources, equitable distribution of resources, people are shocked when I say we got to get beyond equality, because equality has not helped the Latinx community. Equity will help the Latinx community. What do I mean by that? Well, again, we're the largest ethnic minority in Oregon, but we can't have the same as other ethnic minorities because we're too big, right? We're very young. I mean, we have, again, over 500,000 people in Oregon, and we're very young. There's a lot of them. We're not a homogeneous group, right? We live in. That's one thing that's really unique about Oregon too, as Latinos, is that we live in great numbers all across the state. There's no ethnic group beyond the Latinos that can make that claim. Let me give an example. You go to Ontario, I think it's 40%, Hermiston 40%, Woodburn 60%, Salem it's at 40%. You know what I mean? We're in huge numbers. It's not like 1%, 2%. And that's a big difference. But a lot of people don't really think about that. I think we're this invisible majority is how I would say that.
Interesting. Wow. And then when you talk about the equity element of that, if it was equitable, if people of color in Oregon were to get a certain slice of the pie as an equality measure, Latinos would get the same amount as all the other minority groups. Is that what you're saying? You wouldn't get 13.5% of that pie. You'd get 2% because that's what everybody else.
Exactly.
Communities of color are going to get. Is that your point?
Exactly. And it's nothing against, it's just the numbers. I mean, it's a reality, right? That we have to step beyond that and look at the Latinx community for what it is and how large it is. And I don't believe people really understand the size and the depth and the diversity of our community. We have people that are Afro-Latino all the way to indigenous Mesoamericans, and we have Latinos that look like you, and look like me. I mean, I have cousins that have blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes, but people just, you know what I mean? I don't think that they understand in the workforce how large it is and how we're the backbone of the agriculture industry. And, and those things matter, right? If Oregon wants to continue its, what we're known for is agriculture. Well, guess who's out there in the fields? And we haven't talked about that even during the fires, right? There was the worst air quality in the world, and our community was out there working every day.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of big topics here I still want to cover with you. One of them is I kind of cut the story off when we were talking about the Latinx Leadership Network and the work that you did. You talk about the work that you put in to bring resources to the Latinx community in Oregon, not just Woodburn, but in the state of Oregon in response to COVID, considering when the PPP money was handed out and the EIDL loans were going out, there was a gap there, and the people in your network, in your community, were not going to be covered. And the work that you've done, I mean, you'd probably never call it heroic, but I think it sounds heroic when you talk to me about what happened. So give us what you're able to do to your community.
Thank you. It's our community, and I was, I think, again, I'm a humble public servant, and that's what I do. And I saw that there was going to be this huge void. There's trillions of dollars that are coming from federal government, but I knew that the people, a lot of big part of our community, undocumented, the indigenous Mexican Americans, they weren't going to have access to that. So a lot of our organizations like GAUSA and PECUN, they started the Oregon Worker Relief Fund and been to distribute, I think, tens of millions of dollars to folks that wouldn't have a dollar sent to them, even though they're working every day and doing everything they can to help put food on our tables. But as far as like what I did, I just really, I always kind of I'm an optimist, and I took where there was darkness, I just shined a light on. And what I did really is I just tapped into everybody's gifts. I really believe that all of us have a gift, a God-given gift, and that I just basically galvanized that gift and people's time and talent and treasure at some level, and just put it together for a common good, which is humanity, which are people. And I've been able to move people to action. And I think one of our shining stars that happened just recently is we were awarded a $5 million grant from the Oregon Health Authority, an equity grant. And I'm really, really happy about that. I'm proud of it. But now it's time to roll up our sleeves and do the work with what we got. And $5 million, it's a lot of money. But when you're talking about 500,600,000 people, it's about $10 or $20 a person, which is not that much, right? But you know what? We're going to be good stewards. And just so you know, the people that are listening, we're going to basically put it into 4 main pots. One of them is we're going to write grants to community-based organizations who are too small or they didn't have the capacity to write for this grant. So we're going to basically provide them sub-grants and from all over the state. We're also going to we're going to buy lots of PPE and really get them into the people. I think there's a false narrative that people say, oh, there's a lot of PPE out there, but I see in downtown Woodburn, and I've shared the story before of men walking around with a mask, and it's like had its day, right? It's like dirty. These are the disposable ones that somebody should be able to just throw away and grab a new one. So our people don't have that luxury. They have to, that's what they do, or they do cloth mask, or they make up their own mask, right? They rip shirts. I've seen people rip shirts and they tie them around the back of their head, and that's their PPE. And another thing we're doing is we're going to conduct an unprecedented research project with Portland State University, and we're going to study the impacts of COVID-19. I think anything that we do, obviously we want to do data-driven, and I think that this information is going to be really critical for us moving forward. And our final part is, which I'm leading, is a statewide multilingual communication campaign that'll be in Spanish, multiple indigenous languages, and English, because we are a very diverse group. And then we'll also be supporting community-based organizations with communication services as needed. So, for example, if they wanted to host a drive-by testing, but they don't really have the capacity to promote it, we would do that for them.
I know that communities of color have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. Have you seen that in Woodburn?
Absolutely. I think we have a 40% infection rate. It's the most in the state of Oregon when we're, and that's statewide data, by the way, when we're 13%. We are the most infected, have the highest percentage. And we see a lot of clusters in manufacturing setting. You'll see that in farm workers, people that live in housing, like, in close quarters. And so, you'll hear outbreaks. If you look at the top 5 or 10 zip codes, they're all in Latino communities.
I have stumbled into this conversation with you. 2 minutes ago, I didn't know we were going to come to this, but now all this stuff is coming back to me. Migrant populations. And then I remember, when an outbreak takes place in a location where we've got a high concentration of migrant workers or Latinx. First of all, I don't know why it happens the way it does, unless there's just a language barrier, if there's a financial force at work here that keeps people from being able to isolate when they know they may be sick with COVID. I bet you could probably spend a lot of time on that. But where I was going to go was when a community hears that the first place COVID really had an outbreak was in those migrant workers that are out there, the stigma is remarkable. Now, you've said that in Woodburn, it's a little bit of a different system because there's more of you who look like one another. But in an area like around Roseburg, let's say, or in a lot of places in Oregon, boy, I remember when that happened early on in our community, and I was worried about the stigma and what people were going to say. Have you seen that? How do you fight that? What are some of the forces at work?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely, again, out there, but I think, again, I mean, COVID has impacted everybody. It's just disproportionately impacted the Latinx community a lot. What we try to do really is just stay focused and educate people and try to provide them as much information. You talked about information. That trickle-down effect has not worked in our Latino community. That's a very mainstream middle class. Like when we create communication, we talk about Zoom, emails, technology. There is a digital divide, but what we're trying to do, you got to flip that funnel, right? But as far as any stigma, I mean, I think our community, they don't think about it that much. They're just trying to figure out, how do I keep going to work, right? That's literally what the mentality is. And sometimes it's like, I might be sick, but I'm not telling anybody. I know somebody who I live with is sick, but I'm not going to tell anybody. But because I need to work, we need to put food on our table. And I think the way I see Oregonians, sometimes is, I mean, this is kind of harsh, but, we talk about the essential workers, but I feel like sometimes we're the disposable workers.
To your point about, I don't want to get tested, I don't want to talk about this isn't, or I'm going to continue to go to work. I would say that the same is true for just about anyone else. I do think there's clearly more pressure. If you're a migrant worker and you come and you are working in the fields and you start to get sick, first of all, the living conditions and how closely, just culturally, but then also practically, how much space there is or isn't, people really living in very, very close quarters. Yeah. But that pressure to have to go to work, I mean, it's true. It's true in my network. And I've seen people I know who may be COVID positive, but they work because they still got to. So it does. I think that's parallel to. I think that affects both communities, but I think without a doubt, there's more of an impact on that Latino community on that front.
And that's poverty, right? I mean, that's like where I'm pretty much the core is people on the poor end. Farm workers don't make a lot of money. And I think that they've shown that, even through the fires, literally, they worked whether in ashes was falling on them. I have videos of that and pictures of that in Southern Oregon, just continue to work, or here in Estacada, which, I mean, how does that happen, right? I mean, how humane was that to even for the employers to allow them to do that?
Right. One of my favorite things to do is educate people, change perceptions, sometimes ask what may seem like very just naive questions. But I want to make sure that while I have you, for those watching who've always wondered this question, not been able to ask it, you mentioned undocumented workers. You hear illegal aliens all the time. What is the difference in those two phrases referring to the same people? Certainly, maybe there's some a different political perspective even on those words, but why is illegal immigrant so offensive to a Latinx person in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, is again the behind that word, right? I think it's very been ill-willed, mean-spirited. It's us and them, very divisive, and I just honestly don't believe that anybody's illegal. I mean, we didn't cross the border crossed us, right? And at one time when the indigenous people of America's, the Western Hemisphere, there was no borders, right? And I think that's still it's resonated with our community. And so I just think that illegal alien, you associate that with somebody from outer space, I guess. And it just dehumanizes individuals, right? Whereas undocumented individuals, that's really how I see that. They just have not been able to go through a process where they could become either, U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents. And there's just been, but I just think it's an us and them, and it really dehumanizes illegal aliens at its core. You know what I mean? People break laws all the time, and we don't say you're an illegal driver, and then you just, or you're a illegal jaywalker or whatever it is, right? It's not, it doesn't just stick with you, right, like that. And I think it's been really an ugly couple of words there to really try to just keep us really down and society divided.
If I said illegal alien, I meant illegal immigrant. First of all,
Yeah,
so
yeah. That either way,
there's it's maybe slightly better, but still not aware of the whole issue. And I was told by a friend of mine who said that the process to legally naturalize or to become a U.S. citizen from Mexico specifically is nearly impossible. So to suggest that people are here because they skipped a bunch of rules in order to live here is so naive and ignorant and so not accurate that also adds to the offense of that phrase.
Yeah, most people that are here actually undocumented are overstay their visas. It's not like this whole mad rush over the border. I think that's a false narrative, and I think if you did look at the research and data, I can get that for you. But it's mainly people that have overstayed their visas.
Yeah, I've learned a ton, and I really appreciate it. One thing I also want to do though is let you discuss with this ALF audience, this audience of people in Oregon who may not even know anything about ALF at all. But what kind of message do you want to share with the community that might catch this and watch it?
Yeah, I think I'm a really simple person, and I think it always comes down to like people ask me, "What do you want?" We want peace, and we want hope, and we want prosperity. And it's very can be that simple, but it's some of the hardest things to ever do. And I think right now with the turmoil that's going on in the country, and I think people want peace, and I think they want again, even in Oregonian, we want hope, right? Because we're living in a pandemic. We've had these fires, and I think we want hope for a better future. And I think really, prosperity. We're Oregonians. My family, we've been here since the Bracero program, our Latinos. And I think it's really just coming together. I see Woodburn as like, this microcosm of society and how we've been made it work. We're working together, living in harmony, and we value each other's faith, language, culture, food. And so we all kept our identity. So it's like a solid bowl, but not like, but we all kept our identity, right? We're not just we didn't mix up like that and lose our identity. We brought the best of all of our communities and have learned to really just honor it and respect it. And it's a really awesome thing. Like I said, invite anybody to come to Woodburn. You'll see, the Russian Believers, Latinos, seniors. I mean, we're just all working together and trying to, there's always some issues here and there, but I will just say, from a city that was only 10%, now the majority 60%, there was a little turmoil at 20%, but now we kind of broke through that threshold. And now it's just really about how do we make the quality of life better for everybody.
And the diversity you just described makes for a very vibrant community, a beautiful community. And I think your work adds to the amount of acceptance and tolerance and love that takes place around that. And may it ever be so, because it doesn't take much to break that bubble, I guess, if we're talking about bubbles these days. So one would hope that would be the end result, and that people would recognize that as it makes the community more vibrant, as opposed to some who would say they're taking something from us.
Yeah.
Your work is spectacular. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. So I just wanted to let you know we're going to be sending you a T-shirt.
Nice.
Is from speakupwithus.org.
Oh, awesome.
Several sayings on that site. Several of the shirts with different sayings on them. We would love for folks to purchase these. The money raised from these shirts is going to go to the Black United Fund of Oregon. And so Anthony would do me a great honor if you were to wear this shirt around, and diversifying your friends indeed is a way to diversify your knowledge. And that's what you've helped me do today. And I also want to give you credit for another comment that you gave me on the phone. We'll leave people with this. This is quote Anthony Veliz on this. Please. Okay? Don't let fear or perfection stop progress. I wrote that down when we spoke the other day, and I've told like 3 people that over the weekend as I talked to them about it. So you inspired me. Don't let fear or perfection stop progress, because there is no finish line. The work is always there. There's always one more person to talk to. And hopefully we've talked to a handful of people today, Anthony. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. And I would just again close with, thank you for having me. And that, just on your quote, it's true. This interrupting racism is going to get muddy. And I think that we need to just try to be brave and have courageous conversations and not let fear and perfection stop progress.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your grace and your patience with me and the questions that I asked today. But thanks for the representation from Woodburn. And I look forward to the next time I swing through town to be able to catch up to you. By the way, we didn't even talk about your marketing firm, ESO Marketing. You can check that out as well. What's your website?
www.esomarketing.com.
And that is IZO, just like that on the screen. Yep. All right. Thank you very much, Anthony. You can check this out on Interrupting Racism, the YouTube channel. Also, we have a Facebook page, and this is also on my personal Facebook page as well. And it's just been an honor to talk to Anthony, and some of the other folks that we've been talking to that'll be on our program in the future include Katie Piermine from the Oregon Food Bank. Jeff Golden is scheduled to come on, Senator Jeff Golden from Ashland, and we're talking to others as well from the ALF Oregon network, and look forward to comments from people and sharing more as we do our best to interrupt racism. Thank you for watching.